Yes, sir. Where we are, it's Leaf Talk time, where we talk about everything Maple Leaf, including the Maple Leafs. And there's so much news to talk about. Well, Aaron, we talked about this. I've promoted this idea of trading goaltenders. I just didn't mean to bring one back too, but there it is. It's out there now. It happened. It is what it is.
True. Here's the thing. So Wall is out. That's $3.66 million in salary out the door. We have a 24-year-old right shot defenseman coming back the other way. He's a little smaller. He's only 5'11", but that's all right. He's very mobile. The goalie that we brought in is going to be an RFA this summer with arbitration rights. So, we managed to save $2 million against the cap so far by moving out Wall, and actually save even more money by moving out Simone Benoit. But that's offset by Emile Andre's cap hit. And, Urson is going to be an RFA with arbitration rights and team control. Now, let's be honest here. Urson didn't have the most stellar campaign last season. He had an .870 save percentage and a 3.12 goals against average in 33 games with the Flyers last season. So not stellar, but at the same time, not entirely unusable. So it's going to be an interesting situation once we get into camp, especially with the way that Akhtayamov's been performing, with Hildeby waiting in the wings, Stolarz potentially getting healthy, Vladislav Peksa we've got down there. This is one of those situations where I think Curtis McElhaney is going to have his hands full trying to decide who gets the go no go for this particular season. So it'll be interesting for sure.
I got to say that my favorite thing about this trade is not any of the players going or coming. My favorite part of this trade is the Leafs ended up with a draft pick. Now, that's counterintuitive. The last two regimes, Trey Living and Dubas, the Leafs would have been the ones sending a draft pick. Not this time. And as much as this GM has a lot of negative connotations hanging around him, I got to say, the third-round draft pick for Wall, whom I believe was not in the future, and even if he was, they would have lost Stolarz. So this season, Stolarz or Wall were going to end up being picked off. That was going to happen, guaranteed. Worse, Hildeby could have been picked off because, quite frankly, you and I both know, and we've talked about this over time, over this season, the one strength the Leafs had was goaltending. Now, you might not be happy with the way the goaltenders played last year, but the fact is, what we've learned about goaltenders, I've said this for years, and Aaron, I've said it with you on this show. With goaltenders, it isn't about consistency. It is, but that's not the way I see it. The way I see goaltenders is lightning in a bottle. They've got to capture a run. And if they can get on a run, like we saw with Bussy, that's what we're talking about with goaltenders. So what you need are guys that can get that lightning in a bottle. And we know that if you're on waivers in the National Hockey League, you could end up in goal and become a Stanley Cup champion who won 31 regular season games. So I don't know how you want to make the point even more than we already know, just from this year alone.
So, the good news is, like, what they're getting back is a 24-year-old, highly mobile defenseman. I did unfortunately overstate his height. He is actually only 5'9", not 5'11", as previously indicated, but he's a good.
I like your other measurement better.
189 pounds. At least on HockeyDB, he's 189 pounds, 5'9". On Elite Prospects, he's 5'9", listed as 195. So, depending on which website you want to look at, his height and his weight changed just a little bit. The good news is, over the course of the past season with the Flyers, he did play 61 games. He did have 13 points. He was a plus 15 with 22 penalty minutes. So he's not taking a lot of penalties. He's relatively quiet, and he's usually on the ice when Philly are scoring. Now, this lends more credence to the thought that Riley could be on his way out the door. It's one of those tough situations where they have to see if they can get Riley to waive his trade clause, his no trade clause. Sorry. And at the same time, they have to try to prep in the background to make sure that the hole isn't going to be too great. So
my fingers are crossed.
Yeah.
If I'm a Leaf fan, like I said, Austin Matthews and Riley out the door, get some assets. But if Austin Matthews stays with the team this year, they're going to be dancing with fire. They really are going to be dancing with fire. They've got to if they're going to keep him, they definitely have to re-sign him. And if they're going to trade him, then they have to sign him. And they're going to have to go with one of those deals like Marner had. Year 3, we can trade you. Year 4, not so much. So, this is what the Leafs have to do. The no trade thing, they've got to stay away from it and treat it like the plague and live with the consequences. That's just the way it is. So, yeah, I think for the sake of Riley and the team, I think a separation is in order. But that doesn't mean if he stays here, it doesn't mean it's over. It doesn't mean that he can't improve. The question is, can he? And, as a player gets older, that old dog, new tricks thing, it becomes more difficult. That's all. Hey, there's nothing. I don't think either of us would be against him playing really well. Neither one of us. Right.
I think the best thing that could happen would be if Morgan had a rejuvenating year. That way it'd give us at least something a little bit more to work with.
Who doesn't want it for him? You know what I mean? If you're a Leaf fan, 100%. You wanted that for him. I know some Leaf fans, and let's keep that in mind, some Leaf fans have short memories. So, we'll see. So, Aaron, you want to expand on Andre? Or you think you've said enough?
Well, I think we've sort of run through most of the major points that I wanted to cover for Meal anyways. And again, it's that whole puck moving defenseman, relatively reliable on defense, very quiet, fast. That's an important thing. He's averaging 15 to 20 minutes of ice time a night. He's averaged 17 minutes roughly in 42 games, 24, 25. So he's capable of taking up a decent role. Ideally, you'd like to see him take a few more minutes, but compared to some of the minute eaters on the team, I think he'll be okay.
Now, there's discussions, thoughts that Ersson won't get signed. The Leafs will just let him go. I personally think he's a nice little placeholder right now where, if possibly, the Leafs can trade Stolarz. If Stolarz can get traded, I can see Ersson ending up in Akhtimov's place, and I could see Akhtimov coming up here teaming with Hildeby. And I think that would be a good combination for Toronto up here. A guy who's an up and comer in the Hildebeest, and Akhtimov, who clearly has shown that he can win big games, and he's showing it today, or I should say yesterday. And you'll get a chance to put the finishing touches on a really good playoff for him.
100%. I'm genuinely looking forward to Thursday and Friday, if necessary, games, just because it's an opportunity for them to put a stamp on a pretty remarkable season. But yeah, the thinking behind picking up Ersson here, his salary carries a $1.45 million AAV. The qualifying offer to retain his rights sits at roughly $1.6 million. Typically, when it comes to this sort of thing, the qualifying offer is 10% of your previous salary. Now, the Leafs do have a little bit of room to kick around here, with the salary cap rising to 104 from $95.5 million this year. It's not inconceivable that Ersson could receive a small bump. The problem that we have here is Stolarz is locked into a long-term extension. Hildeby has emerged as a legitimate NHL option after a strong campaign last year. You've got Urson at 1.6, possibly, if they do actually tender him. He would be a third or a fourth behind Stolars and Hildeby, and whichever prospect that's Aksayamov or Peksa, the organization chooses to develop internally. At 26, Urson's still young enough to rebound, but I don't know if the Leafs are willing to put a lot of money into his rehabilitations or rehabbing or building him up, gassing up this guy. But we'll see. I mean, they obviously saw something that led them to get him in the first place. So we'll have to see where Curtis McElhaney wants to go with this and how it all pounds out for them.
I really think they'd be well served if they could trade Stolars, then keeping him. I think he's a placeholder in case they can trade Stolars. He's a goaltender that was a goaltender for the Swedish national team, for goodness sakes. And we know Swedes make pretty good goaltenders. So for him to be at the top of the list, there's potential there. The question is, his wins to loss ratio is great too, Aaron. He's won many more games than he's lost. So, the guy knows how to win. And if we're talking about a statistics-based general manager, one of the big stats is going to be how often does he win? Is he a goaltender that can win, which he's proven in Philadelphia he can do, even with an 80 plus goals, goals against average. Or save percentage. There's nothing wrong with that. So why don't we drill down to Akhtenov of the Leafs, the goaltender. Tell us a little about him and how he's played well in the playoffs.
So he had 24 saves last night in a 1-0 shutout. That actually has led the Marlies now to a 3-0 lead in their series against the Chicago Wolves. With that shutout, Aksayamov now has a .928 save percentage and a .210 goals against average throughout the entire playoff run so far. He has been absolutely stellar in his job there, in his time there. And when you look at his performance over the course of the season, and looking at how he played with the Leafs, there's a bit of a promising start there for him. He didn't do particularly well when he was up with the Leafs, but that's only because they let him get shelled every single night in the finest display of Leafs hockey that I've seen in quite some time. But his role with the Marlies has actually positioned him well for this sort of thing. Glad to see that he's getting some of the flowers that he deserves at this point. He's a quiet dude though, and you know what? It's not a complaint or anything like that. It's just he's played really well given the time that he's been given. So his play has basically made their decisions just that much harder.
Absolutely. Major League Baseball, the Jays.
So the Jays did finally back Dylan Cease with 3 home runs and a 6-1 victory over the Red Sox at Fenway. Very nice to see George Springer at a 2-run home run, which was the 300th of his career. Schneider hit one off Peyton Toll, cleared the Green Monster completely, and Jimenez followed with a shot that put Toronto up 3-0 in the 5th inning. It's the first time the Blue Jays have gone back-to-back this season, and that would have been Schneider and Jimenez. Cease had 4 hits and 4 walks while striking out 7. Louis Varland got 4 outs for his 13th save. Vladdy was back in the lineup after missing 2 games with back tightness, but his power seems to be a little bit off this season. I'm not sure if it's part of the nagging back injury or if he's just seeing a little bit of natural regression. But tonight they're going to be back in Boston. It's going to be Max Scherzer pitching against Jake Bennett. Looking forward to seeing that one in about the next half an hour or so. Also hoping to catch the rest of the Tartan Army out there, watching them play and hearing more singing.
Absolutely. Let's talk about tennis.
So Diminar continues his absolute dominance of Shapovalov. with a second round win at Queens Club as part of the HSBC Championships. He beat Shapovalov 6-4, 6-1. He's the top seed at the ATP 500 grass court event at the Queens Club. He's now 6-0 against Shapovalov on the top men's tennis circuit here. The last time Shapovalov actually beat de Minaur was 9 years ago when he beat him in the final round of qualifying for the Surbiton Trophy at the challenger level. Now, he did out-ace de Minaur 7-0 at Andy Murray Arena and had 16 winners to his opponent's 9, but he also hit into 9 double faults and was broken 5 times on 11 chances. So I'm not sure what it is that de Minaur is doing to Shapovalov, but he certainly seems to have his number.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Canada's Fernandez.
So Leyla, unfortunately, lost to Sonmez in the first round. That's Zeynep Sonmez from Turkey. She lost 6-4, 7-6. Fernandez was seated second at the WTA 205 grass court event. Had 7 aces, but hit into 4 double faults and was broken 3 separate times. Sonmez has now evened her career record against Fernandez at 1-1. Fernandez came out on top earlier this year when she beat Sonmez in 3 sets at the Stuttgart Open. She's now unfortunately seen her record drop to 11-17. She was actually number 22 in the world, but she's unfortunately lost her first match in 4 of her last 5 events. So I'm not sure if there needs to be a slight reset here, maybe a coaching change. Not 100% sure. But she's got to do something to get herself back on track.
Absolutely. The WNBA is expanding, Aaron.
Yeah, for those of you who are fans of the Toronto Tempo, the good news is that the schedule is going to be going to 50 games starting in the 2027 season. That's up from 44 games, which was the length of the 2025 and the current 2026 schedule. Now, this was collectively bargained into the new CBA, which was ratified earlier this year. 50 games is the maximum for 27 and 28, with 52 the maximum in 2029. The agreement states the season can end no later than November 1st in 2027 and November 30th in 2028. Now, the fact that there's so much demand for the WNBA at this point has mandated they increase this. It's fantastic to see that they're growing as much as they are. It'll also give folks like me who may not have had a chance to get into a tempo game a couple extra shots per year to see if they're sold out or not.
Absolutely. Let's talk about hockey in Canada, and let's start with the Senators in Ottawa.
So the Senators could be looking to make some changes this offseason. Trade rumors are already swirling, including a new one about defenseman Jordan Spence. Now, just to be clear, Ottawa Citizens Bruce Garriock says this doesn't mean Staios is trying to deal Spence, but that possibility shouldn't be ruled out because all options are on the table with all 32 teams trying to make changes. Now, Spence is just 25 years old. He's originally from Australia and a 4th-round pick by the LA Kings in 2019. Spence played his first 4 seasons at the NHL level for the Kings before joining the Senators this last year. He had 7 goals and 24 assists for 31 points in 73 games. He also had 59 blocks and 55 hits, averaging about 18 minutes and 44 seconds of ice time. That's the highest of his career, aside from a short rookie season stint in which he played more. There's hasn't been a lot out there about who's actually been interested in him, but I think the fact that they're willing to shop him speaks to the direction they might be looking for the team.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the Flames and Blake Coleman.
So there was a lot of talk earlier this offseason and coming through the playoffs about whether or not Blake would remain in Calgary, but the Flames may be preparing to rewrite that script entirely. Now, the Hockey News had previously reported that Calgary was at least exploring the possibility of moving him. That's, a natural consideration for a team deep into a retooling and stockpiling future assets thing. But Calgary appears to be taking a more selective approach, one that prioritizes current roster impact over futures. The Flames are not simply looking to move Coleman for picks or prospects, especially with their draft cupboard already well stocked. Realistically, they'd be looking to bring back someone who can be an immediate help on the roster. As to who that's going to be, Unfortunately, we haven't heard much about that. But for now, Coleman sits in a very familiar but uncertain spot, viewed by some as a trade candidate, by others as a veteran worth keeping. Based on Calgary's indications, it's going to be interesting to see what they decide to do from this point.
Let's talk about the Oilers, and they're still looking for a coach and something about draft picks.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't manufacture draft picks. I'm pretty sure if there's a way to do that, Oilers and their fans would have found it by now. Unfortunately, the position that they're currently in is mostly of their own making, mainly because their previous leadership hasn't been very responsible when it comes to draft picks. I think about the only team that's been as irresponsible has been the Maple Leafs with the way that they've been throwing that around.
Both for the same reason.
You know,
both for the same reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the thing is, they're now actually turning more towards Europe and European players, just because they think that they feel that they can pick them up cheaper, to help them build out their roster. So we'll have to see what can happen. But at this point, it appears that they are looking more towards Europe for help for Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and all of their stars, and finally getting them over the hump, because they're currently in a win now mode.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the Canucks.
Now, it's been rumored before. These rumors keep popping back up again. I mean, it's clear that if given the opportunity, they would trade Elias Pettersson, but mainly because, they've gotten rid of a whole bunch of guys. They got rid of Quinn Hughes, Kiefer Sherwood, Tyler Myers, a whole bunch of others. Now they've added Marco Rossi's Tev Boyum and Liam Ogren, along with Minnesota's 2026 first-round draft pick. But at this point, it looks like they might try to move Pettersson just as a way to clear more cap space, because his contract is huge, and it doesn't look like he's been able to live up to it. And I
don't know how they can trade him without keeping some of the money.
That's the problem, right? Most of it is going to come with retention. And the fact that he's currently sitting there with an $11.6 million contract that has him tied up all the way until 2032 is a bit of a problem, Not to mention the fact that Brock Besser has been rumored to be on the trade block as well, and he's got a $7.25 million contract that's got him tied up to 2032 as well.
So if you were talking rebuild in Vancouver, looks a lot like a rebuild happened.
They're going to have to fire sale it, man. Like, Jake DeBrusk, I think, is about the only one with a reasonable contract, but even he's getting a little long at the tooth. He's tied up with them at $5.5 million per until 2031. So, make of that what you will. But it currently seems that they'd be most likely looking to turn Pettersson into multiple assets that can help their future, as opposed to helping them win now. I'm sorry, Frank, you're on mute.
Right. After 7 decades, wrong phone. After 7 decades, Hockey Night in Canada is no longer on CBC. But they're going to keep...
it's on... Go ahead, Frank.
No, I'll just say, but they're going to keep the name. That was it.
Yeah, they're going to keep the... I think this was the major concern when they first announced that Rogers was going to be the sole rights holder for $11 billion, was that the national broadcaster would be out. And it's unfortunate because, this is something that they started 74 years ago, I think, at least 72.
Long time ago.
Yeah. It
goes back to the 50s. Aaron, it goes back to the 50s. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Hockey
74 years
around before I was, so yeah.
But yeah, after Rogers got the rights with a 12-year, $11.2 billion deal beginning this October, the writing was basically on the wall. Now, while CBC still holds a Hockey Night in Canada trademark and could incorporate the brand into future coverage, this is the first time the program won't be available to Canadian viewers via CBC. It's probably going to be available to us through Sportsnet Plus, which is not something I'm going to be paying for. If it means I have to scale back on my hockey watching in Canada, then that's fine. I will get my hockey through going to live events. But yeah, this is one of those things where, the writing was on the wall as soon as Rogers got their first 12-year, $5.2 billion rights deal back in 2013. You knew the end was coming. It was just a question of when.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the fact that they own the Maple Leafs now makes them all the more confident in pulling some crap like this off. But yeah, I can tell you right now, if I got to start paying more money to see the Leafs, I'm probably just not going to start. I'm not going to watch anymore. I'll just listen on the radio.
Yeah, that's definitely an option. I just happen to think that, if people can't afford something, Aaron, they're going to replace it with something they can. And they might replace it with something that they like better. That's the risk. The risk is that this happened in Chicago 30 years ago, I guess it is now, a little less maybe, where Chicago took all the games off television and you had to go to the game and you couldn't watch the game on TV unless it was sold out. If it wasn't sold out, then they didn't broadcast the game, a lot like the Canadian Football League. What ended up happening is they lost a lot of revenue because you do make revenue putting the game on TV. So, and also you help foster interest, right? So, there's lessons to be learned that sometimes greed, the old saying about killing the golden goose, right? You got to be careful. Like, it's okay if you put it in danger, but if you kill the goose, finding another goose that can lay the kind of eggs that Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment can lay is being risky, is asking someone to be very risky, but it is what it is.
No, it's very true. One last thing I wanted to touch on before we log off here, Frank, was the Leafs have a new coach.
Yep.
Former assistant coach under Mike Babcock from 2014 to 2017, Jim Hiller, has now been brought back. I think Leafs fans will find some comfort in having Hiller come back, mainly because just like the Leafs, Hiller has a bad habit of losing in the first round. And just like the Maple Leafs, he has a consistent opponent that he loses to. In the past 5 years, while Hiller was head coach, the 4 times that he coached them in the playoffs, they lost to the Edmonton Oilers, much in the same way that the Leafs managed to lose to the Boston Bruins a whole bunch of years in a row.
Or Tampa Lightning, or Florida Panthers.
But here's the thing: Hiller has worked with all of the Leafs' major stars before. He's worked with Nylander, he's worked with Matthews, he's worked with Riley. So the hope, and I don't think these guys would welcome him back as a head coach if he was a terrible assistant coach. So there is some hope there in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's drill down on the Marlies. And I want to say that I've been very impressed with their captain, Logan Shaw.
Yeah, he's been doing some yeoman work for them. Between getting the series clinching overtime goal in the last series and also getting the overtime goal in their 5-4 win in Game 2. Not to mention his contribution towards Cowan's goal. It's been absolutely fantastic to watch this dude work.
And his line mate, Lettieri.
Vinny's one of the highest. I think he's the leading scorer in the AHL when it comes to the playoffs right now. Yep. So it's one of those things where Lettieri wasn't particularly noticeable during the regular season. He was a good contributor, but not one of those players that particularly stood out. He just seems to be made for the playoffs.
It's what we talk about all the time. There's some players that are just built for the playoffs. Their game fits the playoffs really, really well, and Lettieri is one of those guys, and that line is very dominant. When they're on the ice, they do command the play. And I got to say, Danford looked impressive as well from what I saw, because I haven't had much chance to see them play, because unlike you, I don't go to the games. But Danford impressed me with his puck handling ability. And I tell you, he's a smart defenseman. And I can see him playing for the Leafs next year. I don't think there's a doubt that he might be one of those projects that young players become, where they come and they don't play every game, but they play enough games to just keep getting their feet wet and getting better at being a defenseman. And Danford's a big kid too. That's another thing that matters. He's mobile and quick and big.
100%. He's one of those players where you don't notice him, and that's not a bad thing. You know what I mean?
Not a bad thing, absolutely.
And to have him perform as well as he has in these Calder Cup playoffs has been an eye opener, I think, for a lot of folks.
Absolutely, it has. For me, it has. Impressed with a couple of players. There's more. We can drill down on it further after the next game. And if the next game is the last game, we'll talk about the championship mini buds.
Yeah, we'll talk about if it does come down to if it does come down that the season is finished by Thursday, which is a possibility. I'm not saying it's written in stone because I don't want to jinx it like that, but you know, there is the opportunity, knock on wood, for them to actually do it. If not, Game 5, if necessary, will go on Friday.
They got 2 games that they can win it at home. And let's add this to the comment. I wanted to mention this as well. If you're playing in the AHL final, Aaron, there are no other hockey games being played. You know that saying that, you know, one times players, you might have heard players say it a few years ago when they say the greatest thing about playing in the Stanley Cup final, I think it was Williams that said it, there are no out-of-town scores.
Yeah, you're the only one. And as it currently stands...
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, as it currently stands, 2 of the top 3 point getters in the playoffs are Vinny Lettieri with 24 points and a defenseman, William Villeneuve, with the Toronto Marlies, who's got himself 19 points.
He's another guy that, you know, that next year, the back line's going to look different, not through trade, but from ascension. I really believe that's going to be the case. And if this young guy that they brought from Philly, with the 3 of them, Aaron, that means that those 3 guys, you know, there's still another Leaf defenseman that could be seen to depart. And if their 1A gets healthy, don't know if he will, and he comes to the team, the Leaf defense is going to look a lot different than it has in the past couple of years.
No, for sure. And like I said, I'm really glad to see that in the top 10, you've got Lettieri, Villeneuve, Shaw, and Easton Cowan. So there's 4 Marlies in the top 10, which is really, really nice to see.
Well, it's not very Leafian.
No, very not Leafy at all.
Right? All right. He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Sanishi. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time. Have a great night, everybody, and get ready for AHL hockey and maybe a championship banner at the Coca-Cola Coliseum.
Fingers crossed. Let's go Marlies.